That morning, I had absolutely no idea how drastically my life was about to transform, all because of a single glance. He stood there in the lobby wearing a perfectly tailored black suit that screamed expensive, phone in hand, and his eyes held that unmistakable confusion I'd seen on every first-day employee's face. I immediately assumed he was the new intern HR had mentioned yesterday. Perfect timing, I thought. I could use the help, and showing him the ropes would earn me some brownie points with management. "Hey, you must be the new guy, right?" I said with my friendliest smile, approaching him with confidence. He looked up at me, those striking blue-gray eyes showing a flicker of surprise before his expression softened into an amused smile. "Yeah, kinda." His voice was deeper than I expected, smooth and calm, but I didn't think much of it. First-day nerves probably had him trying to sound more mature than he felt. "Great. Come on. Let me show you around before things get creasy. Monday mornings here are absolutely insane." I gestured toward the elevators, and to my relief he followed without protest. As we rode up to the 12th floor, I gave him the standard rundown. "So, our department handles all the marketing campaigns for the tech division. It gets pretty hectic, especially during product launches. You'll probably feel overwhelmed at first. But don't worry, everyone does on their first day." He simply nodded, listening intently, hands casually in his pockets. There was something oddly composed about him, but I chalked it up to him trying to make a good impression. When we reached my cubicle area, I pulled out the spare chair from the neighboring desk and patted it. "All right, sit here. I'm going to start you off with something simple so you can get a feel for how we organize things." I grabbed a massive stack of client reports from my filing cabinet and placed them in front of him with a slight thud. "These need to be sorted alphabetically by company name and then by date. Pretty straightforward, right? Just focus and you'll get through them quickly." He glanced at the pile, then back at me, and for a split second I thought I saw amusement dancing in his eyes. But he reached for the first folder without hesitation. "Got it. Perfect. I'll be right here if you have any questions." I settled into my own chair and dove into my emails, feeling rather pleased with myself for being such a helpful colleague. Around mid-morning, I realized I desperately needed coffee. "Hey, could you do me a favor and grab me a coffee from downstairs? Medium latte, 2 sugars, extra foam. There's a coffee shop in the building lobby." He stood up immediately. "Sure. Anything else?" "No, that's it. Thanks." I pulled out a $10 bill from my wallet and handed it to him. He looked at the money for a moment, that same subtle smile playing on his lips, before accepting it. "Be right back." When he returned 15 minutes later, he placed the most perfectly made latte I'd ever gotten from that coffee shop on my desk. Even the foam art was immaculate, a delicate leaf pattern that the baristas rarely bothered with unless you tipped generously. "Wow, this is perfect. You've got good taste in coffee," I said, genuinely impressed. "What's your name, by the way? I just realized I've been ordering you around without even introducing myself properly." "Jarvis," he replied, his smile widening just slightly. "Nice to meet you, Jarvis. I'm Kellen from the marketing strategy team. Welcome aboard." He nodded, but there was definitely something peculiar about his expression, like he was enjoying a private joke that I wasn't part of. I shrugged it off. Maybe he was just one of those naturally mysterious types. Throughout the afternoon, I kept him busy. I needed copies of the quarterly presentation. He handled it flawlessly. I asked him to forward some emails to the design team, done without a single mistake. When the conference room needed to be set up for tomorrow's client meeting, I sent him to arrange the chairs and test the projector. Each time, he completed the task efficiently and returned with a quiet "all done" and that same enigmatic smile. By late afternoon, I was actually starting to appreciate having an intern. This guy was competent, didn't ask unnecessary questions, and followed instructions to the letter. Maybe I should request to keep him on my team after his training period ended. As I was packing up my laptop, I noticed my colleague Lizzie approaching from the break room. The moment she saw me, her eyes widened and she covered her mouth, clearly trying not to burst out laughing. "Kellen," she whispered urgently, grabbing my arm and pulling me aside. "Are you completely out of your mind?" What did I do?" I was genuinely confused by her reaction. "Oh my God, you just spent the entire day bossing around Jarvis. Do you even know who that is?" My stomach dropped. "Jarvis? What about him?" Lizzie looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Jarvis Holt. Our new CEO. The board announced his appointment last week. He started today. That's who you've been treating like your personal errand boy for the past 8 hours. The world seemed to tilt sideways. My mouth went completely dry. What? No. No. That can't be right. HR said we were getting a new intern today. Yeah. In the finance department. Not here. Not him. She gestured across the office where Jarvis now stood outside the executive conference room. Phone to his ear, his entire demeanor completely transformed. He looked commanding, authoritative, every inch the CEO he apparently was. My legs felt weak. I'd just spent the entire day giving the CEO menial tasks. I'd sent him to make coffee runs. I'd had him alphabetizing files like a first-year intern. I'd even sent him to clean the conference room, and he'd done it all without saying a single word to correct me. Oh God. Oh God. I'm so fired, I whispered, feeling the blood drain from my face. Lizzie squeezed my shoulders sympathetically. I honestly don't know whether to be horrified for you or impressed that you managed to turn the CEO into your assistant for an entire day. I watched as Jarvis finished his call and glanced in my direction. Our eyes met across the office floor, and he gave me that same small, knowing smile he'd been wearing all day. Now it made perfect sense. He'd been amused the entire time. He'd known exactly what was happening and had let me dig myself into this catastrophic hole. The worst part? He'd never once stopped me. Not once. He'd simply followed every instruction, completed every task, and watched me march confidently toward what would surely be the most humiliating moment of my professional career. Tomorrow morning, I'd probably be called into HR to collect my things. But tonight, all I could do was stand there frozen in absolute mortification, wondering how I'd managed to mistake the CEO for an intern and somehow get away with it for an entire day. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jarvis's amused expression as I handed him that stack of files. The way he'd accepted my coffee order without comment. How he'd arranged chairs in the conference room without mentioning he'd be the one leading the meeting there tomorrow. By morning the entire office knew. I could feel eyes on me the moment I stepped through the door. Whispers followed me down the hallway. Someone had apparently posted about it on the company's internal chat, and now I was the laughingstock of the entire building. I'd barely sat down when my phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Meeting with J. Holtz, 9 a.m. Executive Office. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. This was it. The termination meeting. I'd probably be escorted out by security within the hour. At exactly 9 o'clock, I stood outside the executive suite, my heart hammering so violently I could hear it in my ears. The assistant at the desk gave me a sympathetic look before gesturing toward the massive oak door. He's expecting you. Go right in. I knocked, heard a calm "come in," and stepped into what I was certain would be my professional execution. Jarvis sat behind an enormous desk, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His arms were crossed, expression unreadable. The morning sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him created an almost intimidating silhouette. Sit down, Kellen. I sat, my palms already sweating against the leather armrests. Sir, I want to start by saying how incredibly sorry I am. I had absolutely no idea who you were, and I completely understand if you need to let me go. There's really no excuse. He raised one hand, cutting me off mid-sentence. Stop. I fell silent immediately, waiting for the axe to fall. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, fingers steepled together. Yesterday you gave me approximately 17 different tasks. I completed every single one without complaint, without ego, without announcing my position. Do you know why? I shook my head, unable to find my voice. Because I wanted to observe how you operate when you think nobody important is watching. How you delegate, how you prioritize, how you communicate expectations. He paused, and to my absolute shock, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Your approach was remarkable, Kellen. You're efficient, clear, and you understand how to maximize productivity. Most people in this building couldn't delegate half as effectively as you did yesterday. My brain short-circuited. What? You have a natural instinct for leadership. The problem is, you don't seem to realize it. You're stuck in a mid-level position doing work that doesn't challenge your actual capabilities. He leaned back his chair, studying me with those analytical blue-gray eyes. So I'm not firing you. I'm offering you a position. I don't understand. The words came out barely above a whisper. My executive assistant just accepted a position in London. I need someone sharp, organized, and capable of handling high-pressure situations without falling apart. Someone who can anticipate needs and execute plans efficiently. He tilted his head slightly. Someone exactly like you demonstrated yesterday. Even if you were operating under completely false assumptions. You want me to be your assistant? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For 3 months initially. A trial period. You'll work directly with me on strategic initiatives. Attend board meetings. Coordinate with department heads. If it works out, we'll discuss making it permanent. If not, you'll return to your current position with my recommendation for advancement. He stood and walked around the desk, extending his hand. So what do you say, deal? I stared at his outstretched hand, my mind racing. This morning I'd expected to be fired. Now I was being offered a position that could change my entire career trajectory. I stood up, legs slightly shaky, and took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and somehow reassuring despite everything. Excellent. You start immediately. Clear your desk downstairs and move your things to the assistant's office next door. We have a board presentation at 11 that you'll need to familiarize yourself with. He released my hand but held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Oh, and Kellen, just so we're clear, I don't expect you to get my coffee anymore. We have people for that. There was that subtle smile again, the one I was beginning to realize meant he found something genuinely amusing rather than mocking. Right. Of course. I really am sorry about. Don't apologize again. What happened yesterday gave me more insight into your capabilities than any traditional interview could have. Consider it an unconventional assessment. He walked back to his desk and picked up a tablet, effectively dismissing me. Oh, and one more thing. I paused at the door. Yes? Welcome to the team, Kellen. I think we're going to work very well together. As I left his office, my mind was spinning. Lizzie practically ambushed me in the hallway, eyes wide with curiosity. Well? Are you unemployed? No. I'm his new executive assistant. Her jaw dropped. You're kidding. I wish I was. Kellen, that's incredible. That's one of the most prestigious positions in the company. She grabbed my shoulders, shaking me slightly. How did you go from mistaking him for an intern to becoming his right hand in less than 24 hours? I honestly have no idea. I glanced back at the closed office door, still trying to process everything. But I have a feeling the next 3 months are going to be absolutely intense. What I didn't say, what I couldn't quite articulate even to myself, was that something had shifted during that handshake. The way he'd looked at me, the warmth in his voice when he'd said we'd work well together, the fact that he'd turned what should have been a termination meeting into an opportunity. This wasn't just about a job anymore. There was something else happening beneath the surface. Something I wasn't quite ready to acknowledge. But as I packed up my old desk and prepared to move to the executive floor, I couldn't shake the feeling that accepting this position meant stepping into something far more complicated than a simple career advancement. And despite every rational voice in my head telling me to be careful, I found myself looking forward to it. The first week in my new role was absolutely relentless. Jarvis ran the company with precision that bordered on obsessive. Every meeting had a purpose. Every decision was backed by data, and every minute seemed accounted for in his meticulously organized schedule. I found myself working 12-hour days just to keep pace with him, learning the intricacies of ongoing projects, memorizing the names and politics of board members, and trying to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. But somewhere around day 5, something began to change. It started small. A comment here, a glance there. Moments that lasted just slightly longer than strictly professional. We were reviewing third-quarter projections late one evening when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. Do you ever take breaks, or do you just run on caffeine and determination? I glanced up from my laptop, surprised by the personal question. I take breaks. Sometimes. When was the last time you ate something that wasn't from the vending machine? I had to think about it. Breakfast? Maybe? He closed his laptop with a decisive click. Come on. What? We're not done with. We're taking a break. There's a Thai place 2 blocks away that stays open late. We'll work better if we're not both running on empty. He was already standing, reaching for his jacket. 20 minutes later, we sat in a small restaurant with exactly 3 other customers, bowls of curry between us. It was strange seeing Jarvis in this context. Sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, looking almost relaxed. "Tell me something about yourself that's not in your personnel file," he said, twirling noodles around his fork. "Why do you want to know?" "'Cause I'm spending more time with you than anyone else in my life right now, and I realized I know absolutely nothing about who you actually are outside of work." He took a bite, waiting. I considered deflecting, but decided honesty might be easier. "I moved here 3 years ago from a small town in Oregon. No family nearby. I took this job because I wanted to prove I could make it in a major company without connections or advantages. Just merit. And you have? Your performance reviews are excellent, even if you've been overlooked for promotions you deserved." He said it matter-of-factly, like he'd already reviewed my entire employment history, which he probably had. "How do you know I deserved them?" "Because I've seen how you work. You don't just complete tasks. You anticipate problems, create solutions, and improve processes. That's not average performance. That's exceptional talent being underutilized." The compliment caught me off guard, warmth spreading through my chest. "Thank you. That actually means a lot." We talked for another hour, the conversation flowing more easily than I'd expected. He told me about his background in corporate restructuring, his philosophy on leadership, even admitted that taking the CEO position had been a gamble after turning down 3 others. "Why did you finally say yes to this one?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment, considering. "Because I was tired of fixing other people's companies. I wanted to build something meaningful from a stable foundation. And this place has good bones. It just needed the right direction." When we finally returned to the office, something had fundamentally shifted between us. The air felt different, charged with an awareness that hadn't existed before. That pattern continued over the following weeks. Late nights became routine, but they stopped feeling like just work. We'd finish reviewing reports and drift into conversations about everything else: books, travel, ambitions, failures. He had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he was relaxed, and I found myself actively trying to make him laugh, just to see that rare, genuine smile. One particularly exhausting Friday, we were the last ones in the building. I was drafting talking points for Monday's investor meeting when I felt his presence behind me. "You've been staring at that same paragraph for 10 minutes, he observed, leaning against my desk. "It's not flowing right. The transition feels forced." He moved closer, reading over my shoulder. I was acutely aware of how near he was, the subtle scent of his cologne, the warmth radiating from him. "Try restructuring it. Lead with the outcome, then justify the methodology. Investors care about results first, process second." I made the change and he was right. It read much better. "You're annoyingly good at this. Years of practice." He didn't move away. Instead, he asked quietly, "Can I ask you something personal?" My pulse quickened. "Okay, do you enjoy working with me? Or do you just tolerate it because it's your job?" I turned in my chair to look at him directly, surprised by the vulnerability in the question. "I enjoy it, more than I probably should, actually." "Why?" "Because I find myself looking forward to coming to work, which hasn't happened in years. And I'm trying to figure out if that's because of the projects we're working on or—" He trailed off, but his eyes stayed locked on mine. The unspoken words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. "Or," I prompted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Or because of you." My breath caught. This was crossing a line we both knew existed, acknowledging something that had been building for weeks. "Jarvis, we can't." "I know." He straightened up, putting distance between us again. "I know all the reasons why this is complicated, but I also know that I've never connected with someone the way I do with you. And I don't just mean professionally." I stood up, needing to be on equal footing for this conversation. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere between you ordering me around like an intern and now, I started caring about you as more than just an exceptional employee." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "And I'm saying that I think you feel it too, even if neither of us wants to admit it." He was right. I did feel it. Every lingering glance, every conversation that went deeper than it needed to, every moment when our hands accidentally touched and neither of us pulled away immediately. It all added up to something I'd been trying desperately to ignore. "This is a terrible idea," I said, even as my heart argued otherwise. "Probably the worst." He stepped closer again. "But I've built my career on calculated risks. And you, Kellen, might be worth the risk. The city lights glowed through the windows behind him. And in that moment, with just the two of us in the empty office, the professional boundaries that were supposed to protect us felt paper thin. We should go home, I managed, though I didn't move. We should, he agreed, also not moving. Neither of us did. We just stood there, the truth hovering between us, both knowing that we'd just crossed an invisible threshold that we couldn't uncross. Finally, he broke the tension. I'll drive you home. It's late. In his car, silence filled the space, but it was different now, loaded with everything we hadn't said. When he pulled up to my apartment, he turned to me. Kellen, I need you to know I would never use my position to pressure you into anything. If you want to keep this strictly professional, I'll respect that completely. And if I don't, the words escaped before I could stop them. His eyes darkened with something intense. Then we figure it out together. Carefully, I nodded, grabbed my bag and got out of the car before I could do something reckless. But as I watched him drive away, I knew that carefully was going to be nearly impossible. Because whatever this was between us, it was already too strong to ignore. And that terrified me almost as much as it thrilled me. 3 weeks had passed since that conversation in his car, and the tension between Jarvis and me had become almost unbearable. We weren't just confined to office hours anymore. Our relationship, whatever it was, had started bleeding into evenings and weekends. Casual dinners after particularly grueling days. Saturday morning coffee runs where we discuss everything except work. Long silences that felt comfortable rather than awkward, filled with an understanding that didn't require words. But people were starting to notice. I was grabbing lunch from the break room when Lizzie cornered me, her expression serious. Kellen, we need to talk. About what? She glanced around to make sure we were alone before lowering her voice. You and Jarvis. Everyone's talking about how much time you spend together, the way he looks at you during meetings, how you both disappear after hours. My stomach tightened. We're working. That's literally my job description. Come on. I've known you for 3 years. This is different and you know it. Her eyes were concerned, not judgmental. Just be careful. Office relationships are risky enough. But when there's a power dynamic involved, that's dangerous territory. There's nothing going on. I lied, the words tasting bitter. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Because late at night when my phone lit up with his messages, simple things like you awake or thinking about tomorrow's presentation, I always responded immediately, because the highlight of my day had become those moments when he'd smile at something I said, genuine and unguarded. Because whenever our hands accidentally brushed while reaching for the same document, neither of us pulled away as quickly as we should have. That Friday evening, everything shifted irrevocably. We were at his penthouse reviewing the quarterly financial reports. The numbers had finally balanced. Projections looked solid, and we'd finished earlier than expected. But instead of gathering my things to leave, I found myself sinking deeper into his couch, reluctant to end the evening. Jarvis poured himself a glass of wine, the city lights creating a stunning backdrop through the floor-to-ceiling windows. You never talk about yourself. Why is that? What do you mean? We talk all the time. About work, about strategies, about company politics, but never about you, what you want, what scares you, what keeps you up at night. He sat down, closer than necessary, his eyes searching mine. You keep everyone at arm's length. I've been watching and I can't figure out if it's intentional or if you even realize you're doing it. I felt exposed under his gaze. Maybe getting close to people just makes everything more complicated, especially with me. It wasn't a question, yes, especially with you. He set his wine glass down with deliberate care and turned to face me fully. What if I want complicated, Kellen? What if simple and safe sounds boring compared to what we could have? My throat went dry. Jarvis, we shouldn't. Why not? Give me one good reason that isn't about company policy or what other people think. His voice dropped lower, more intense, because I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this. I'm tired of keeping my distance when all I want is to be closer to you. You're asking me to risk everything. My voice came out shakier than I intended. No, I'm asking you to be honest about what you already feel. I see it in the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. The way you find excuses to stay late even when the work is done. The way your breath catches when I stand too close. He reached out, his fingers barely grazing my jaw. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm imagining this, and I'll never bring it up again. I couldn't. Because he wasn't wrong. This is insane. I whispered, even as I leaned slightly into his touch. You're my boss. If anyone finds out, then I'll handle it. I'll resign if I have to. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. His thumb traced along my cheekbone, the touch sending electricity through my entire body. But I can't keep pretending you're just my assistant when you've become so much more than that. The confession hung between us, raw and vulnerable. This was the point of no return. I could pull back, restore the professional boundary, save both our careers. Or I could lean forward and let whatever this was finally happen. I chose to lean forward. The kiss started tentative, questioning, giving me every opportunity to change my mind. But the moment our lips met, something inside me unlocked. All the weeks of tension, the careful distance we'd maintained, the feelings I'd been trying so hard to suppress. It all came rushing to the surface. His hand moved to the back of my neck, pulling me closer as the kiss deepened. It felt like falling and flying simultaneously, terrifying and exhilarating. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the reality of what we'd just done settled over us. We can't take this back, I said quietly. I don't want to. His forehead rested against mine, his eyes still closed. I know this complicates everything. I know there will be consequences. But Kellen, you're worth every single one of them. We talked for hours after that, curled up on his couch as the city lights glittered below, about our fears, our hopes, what this meant for us professionally and personally. We didn't have all the answers, but we had each other, and for that night, it felt like enough. When I finally left his penthouse around 3 in the morning, everything had fundamentally changed. We'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Acknowledged feelings that couldn't be unspoken. The elevator ride down felt surreal. I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. Same person, same face, but somehow completely transformed. I just kissed my boss. More than that, I'd admitted to myself that I was falling for him. My phone buzzed with a message from Jarvis. Get home safe. And Kellen? No regrets. I typed back, no regrets. But as I drove through the empty streets, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered warnings about what Monday would bring. How we'd navigate this at the office. What would happen when, not if, but when people found out. I pushed those thoughts aside. Tonight had been about honesty, about finally admitting what we both felt. Tomorrow we'd figure out how to handle the complications, because some things were worth the risk. And Jarvis, with his intensity and vulnerability, his brilliant mind and unexpected tenderness, was definitely worth the risk. I just hoped we'd both survive the fallout when reality inevitably crashed down on us. The following Monday morning felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. Jarvis and I had agreed to keep things professional at the office while we figured out how to navigate our new reality. But maintaining that facade proved nearly impossible when every glance carried weight, every accidental touch sent sparks through my system, and the memory of Friday night replayed constantly in my mind. And apparently we weren't as subtle as we thought. The whispers started almost immediately. I could feel eyes tracking us during the morning briefing, see the knowing looks exchanged when Jarvis asked me to stay behind after meetings. By lunchtime, the speculation had reached a fever pitch. I was organizing files in my office when Lizzie appeared in the doorway. Arms crossed, expression unreadable. Conference room. Now. She didn't wait for a response, just turned and walked away. I followed, my stomach knotting with anxiety. Once inside the empty conference room, she locked the door and faced me. I'm only going to ask this once, and I need the truth. Are you involved with Jarvis? There was no point lying anymore. Yes. She exhaled slowly, running her hands through her hair. Oh, Kellen, do you have any idea how dangerous this is? We're being careful. Are you? She cut me off, her voice rising slightly. Because from where I'm standing, the entire office has noticed something's going on. The way he defends your ideas in meetings like they're sacred. How you're the only person he actually listens to when he's stressed. The fact that you both leave at the same time every single evening. I sank into a chair, the weight of reality crushing down on me. What am I supposed to do? Ignore how I feel? Pretend nothing happened? Lizzie's expression softened. She sat down beside me, taking my hand. I want you to be happy. Genuinely, I do. But the board won't care about your feelings. They'll see a conflict of interest, a violation of company policy. Jarvis might survive it because he's the CEO. But they'll paint you as someone who slept their way into an executive position. The truth of her words stung. So what's your advice? Either end it now or prepare for war. Because when this comes out, and it will, you'll need to be ready for the consequences. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, Lizzie's warning echoing in my mind. That evening, as I was packing up to leave, Jarvis appeared at my office door. Rough day? He asked, reading my expression instantly. People are talking. Lizzie confronted me. She knows. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Then maybe it's time we stop hiding. Are you serious? Jarvis, if we go public, the board will destroy us. Let them try. His jaw set with determination. I'm tired of pretending. I want to take you to dinner without checking if anyone from the company might see us. I want to hold your hand without worrying about who's watching. And I want that too, but we need to be realistic about. My phone rang, interrupting us. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Kellen? An unfamiliar voice. Cold and professional. This is Margaret from HR. We need you to come to the 14th floor immediately for an urgent meeting. My blood ran cold. What's this about? We'll discuss that when you arrive. Please come now. The line went dead. Jarvis saw my expression. What happened? HR wants to see me. Right now. Panic clawed at my chest. Someone must have reported us. He grabbed his jacket. I'm coming with you. That'll only make it worse. I don't care. We're in this together. But when we reached HR, they separated us immediately. I was ushered into a small conference room where Margaret sat with two other stern-faced executives and, to my horror, Ashley from the board. Mr. Kellen, we've received reports about an inappropriate relationship between you and CEO Jarvis Holtz. Margaret's tone was clinical, detached. Multiple witnesses have observed behavior that suggests a romantic involvement. Is this true? I could lie. I could deny everything, save my job. But looking at their faces, I knew they already had proof. And more importantly, I was tired of hiding. Yes, Jarvis and I are involved. Ashley leaned forward, his smile cold and victorious. Thank you for your honesty. As of this moment, you're suspended pending a full investigation. You'll need to surrender your access badge and leave the premises immediately. You can't. We absolutely can. Company policy is clear about relationships between superiors and subordinates. You violated that policy, and there will be consequences. He stood, clearly enjoying this. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. The next hour passed in a blur of humiliation. Security standing over me while I packed my desk. Colleagues watching as I was walked out of the building. The crushing realization that my career might be over. I was sitting in my apartment still in shock when Jarvis called. They suspended me too, but I walked out before they could make it official. His voice was tight with controlled anger. Kellen, I need you to listen very carefully. I'm not letting them destroy you because of me. I'm going to fix this. How? They have all the power, not all of it. I still have options. Trust me, please. This isn't over. But as I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the boxes of belongings from my desk, it certainly felt over. I'd risked everything for this relationship, and now I was paying the price. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is what happens when you aim above your station. Maybe next time you'll stay in your lane. The message was unsigned, but I didn't need a signature to know it came from someone who wanted to see me fail. I wanted to cry, to rage, to regret everything. But instead, I found myself thinking about Jarvis, about his determination, his willingness to fight for us, about how despite everything I didn't regret falling for him, even if it cost me everything else. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning. I wasn't allowed to attend, but Jarvis texted me updates throughout. Ashley had compiled everything. Time-stamped photos of us leaving together, screenshots of our text conversations, somehow obtained from company servers, even witness statements from colleagues who'd noticed our excessive familiarity. The evidence was damning, clinical and completely stripped of context or emotion. Jarvis defended our relationship fiercely. According to his messages, he'd argued that our personal connection had never compromised professional judgment, that every decision made had been in the company's best interest, that what we did outside office hours was our private business. But corporate boards don't care about love stories. They care about liability, public perception, and precedent. The decision was swift and brutal. Jarvis could remain as CEO only if he ended the relationship and I was permanently terminated. Otherwise, he would need to resign. I was staring at my phone, reading his summary of the meeting when he called. "Don't say anything yet. Just listen." His voice was steady, resolved. "I'm resigning. Effective immediately." "No. Absolutely not. Jarvis, that's insane. You're worth more than this job. More than any job." He spoke over my protests. "They gave me an ultimatum. My position or you. That's the easiest decision I've ever made." Tears streamed down my face. "You've worked your entire life to get to this position. You can't throw it away because of me." "I'm not throwing it away. I'm choosing what matters most." His voice softened. "Careers can be rebuilt, Kellen. Companies can be found. But you, what we have, that's irreplaceable. But what will you do?" "I've already received calls from 3 headhunters. Turns out resigning on principle makes you attractive in the job market. Plus, I have enough saved to take some time, figure out what I actually want to do next." He paused. "Maybe something that doesn't involve sacrificing my personal life for corporate politics." "I can't believe you're doing this." "Believe it? I'm done letting other people dictate who I can care about. I'm done pretending that professional success means anything if I'm miserable in every other aspect of my life." His voice grew firmer. "I choose you, Kellen. Today, tomorrow, and every day after. If that makes me unprofessional or reckless or whatever else they want to call it, I don't care." 2 days later, Jarvis made his resignation public. The business news sites exploded with speculation about why a successful CEO would suddenly leave. Some sources got close to the truth. Others spun wild theories about corporate espionage or health issues. We decided to control our own narrative. Jarvis posted on his professional social media, "I'm stepping down from my position to pursue a relationship that means more to me than any corporate title. Sometimes the most important decision you can make is choosing personal happiness over poor expectations. I don't regret it for a second." The response was overwhelming. Some people applauded his honesty. Others criticized his lack of professionalism. Business analysts debated whether emotion had any place in executive decisions. But through all the noise, we stood together. The following week, we went to lunch at a popular downtown restaurant. No hiding, no pretending to be just colleagues. When Jarvis reached across the table and took my hand, several people definitely noticed and photographed it. "Are you sure about this?" I asked quietly. "Once we're public, there's no going back. I've never been more certain about anything." He squeezed my hand gently. "I spent years building a career, climbing the corporate ladder, achieving every goal I set for myself. And I was successful, respected, accomplished. But I was also lonely. Then you walked into my life, mistook me for an intern, and everything changed." I laughed despite the tears threatening to fall. "That was not my finest moment. That was the moment I knew you were special. Because you treated everyone the same, with respect, clear communication, genuine kindness. You didn't care about titles or hierarchy. You just cared about getting things done and helping people." He lifted my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles softly. How could I not fall for that? Over the next few weeks, we built a new normal. Jarvis consulted with companies that appreciated his expertise without demanding his soul. I found a position at a startup where my skills were valued and my relationship wasn't anyone's business but my own. We moved in together a month later. His penthouse became our penthouse, filled with both our belongings, our compromises, our shared life. One evening, I found him on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. I wrapped my arms around him from behind, resting my head against his back. "Any regrets?" I asked softly. He turned in my arms, his hands framing my face with infinite gentleness. "Not a single one. You know what I've learned? Success isn't about the biggest salary or the most impressive title. It's about waking up next to someone who makes you want to be better. It's about building something real with someone who sees all of you. The good, bad, the complicated, and chooses to stay anyway. I'll always choose to stay," I promised. "Good. 'Cause I'm planning on keeping you around for a very long time." He kissed me slowly, thoroughly, The kind of kiss that still made my heart race even after everything we'd been through. We started this journey with you mistaking me for an intern and bossing me around. Look at us now. Equals, partners. Building a life together. Best mistake I ever made, I whispered against his lips. Best day of my life, he agreed. The 3-month trial period he'd originally offered had transformed into forever. We'd survived corporate politics, public scrutiny, and impossible choices. We'd chosen each other over careers, over expectations, over everything else. And standing there on that balcony, wrapped in each other's arms with the city stretching out below us, I knew we'd keep choosing each other, every single day, because some risks are worth taking. Some people are worth fighting for. And Jarvis? He was worth everything.